That dog that had a good mind. Ends again when you take all your time.
Quiet, please. Bhí uisna agus a cháirte bhain anáid a chorá ar trúna áilinn seo an aimsir go hálainn. Ní dóilinn go déanta go róha leis an ealaíonn ach is ionta go rud é go bhfuil sé chuteiste. It's lovely to see you all here on such a wonderful, glorious afternoon. Very hard to leave the garden or the beach, and it really needs a special reason, I suppose. And that special reason is standing to my right here. It's 60 years ago since he first walked into our bookshop and met my mother and talked to her about the idea of hanging paintings. And well, a lot of things have changed since and we have never looked back, and nor certainly Kenneth has never looked back. And it's, as always, it's just such a joy to have yet another exhibition of his hanging in the gallery, to see what he's doing now, how he has changed, how he has moved on from what he was doing before. And it's a real pleasure to have him. I have to say it's been an extraordinary 60 years since 1953. It's been a wonderful relationship that's been built on a lot of trust and great friendship, and hopefully it's going to go on for a very long time to come. I also have to say that in the recent past, and certainly in the latter part of that 60 years, his work has been entirely focused really on Connemara, and in particular on a small area just outside Clifton, Ballinaboy. And that is why we have asked this evening to open this exhibition Kathleen Villiers-Tuthill. She interprets a lot of what goes on in the Clifton area, but through a very different kind of a medium, not through paint, but through words and research and so on. So would you welcome, please, Kathleen Villiers-Tuthill.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for asking me to open this wonderful exhibition of Kenneth Webb's paintings. And as Tom says, it's to celebrate the long association between Kenneth Webb and the Kenny family. There are 41 paintings hanging in the exhibition, and many of them have been inspired by Connemara, either Kenneth's garden in Ballinaboy or just beyond the boundary in the bog, which is the blanket bog that lies just beyond that. I was first introduced to Kenneth's paintings back not quite 60 years ago, but almost, when I was a schoolgirl in Clifton in 1968, when I was working in Miller's Gallery. And there was always a great flurry. I don't know if any of you remember, the gallery's now closed, so there's no competition.
It wasn't standing.
It was upstairs, up above the shop, but it was a very small gallery. But it was successful. And there was always a great flurry when Kenneth would arrive in with some of his paintings, because they were very large. And the idea was to try and find a place, and Albert and Kenneth would have a little bit of a to and fro until they found the exact right spot. But they always managed to find the right spot for the paintings. But at the time, I remember being struck not just by the size of them, but also by the colours, because this was we had never seen Clifton depicted with such strong, dark colours, or Connemara depicted with such strong, dark colours at the time. We were only accustomed to seeing sort of brown bogs and pale blue skies, and the mountains, the 12 Bends, were usually either a grey or a pale purple. But now we've been hit face on with these very large colours. And I remember saying to the 16-year-old, like, you know, another 16-year-old who was there at the time, saying, they'll never catch on, you know. So here we are 45 years later, and I find myself opening an exhibition, and I'm very proud to be in this position. If somebody tapped me on the shoulder way back then, I would never have agreed that I would ever be doing this. So I'm very pleased to be here. But Kenneth's association with Connemara goes back even further. But in the 70s, he purchased a house there in 1972, was it, or 73?
Yeah, 72.
Well, at the time, he had moved his family from the north of Ireland, where they had lived since 1953, and they had purchased a house in England and a home in England really, and a house in Clifton, just in Ballinaboy. And like many other artists before him, he found himself to be attracted to Connemara and had been coming back there for many years because he had been bringing students there from his landscape school of landscape painting. So, and even though I didn't know who he was in 1968, everybody else seemed to have. He was well established at the time and had been bringing students to Connemara for many, many years. But he was inspired by Connemara, and he found there a great deal of inspiration, which thankfully has continued on to this very day, which is quite a long period to be able to be associated with one and get all your inspiration from one particular area. Probably not all your inspiration, but it's certainly a great part of it at the moment. But so what did that as you can see, but I felt that really after that, when I did learn a little bit more about Kenneth, I always found that whenever I came across a Kenneth Webb painting, I always managed to take a little bit longer to stay at it and study it. And really I felt that over the years Kenneth has educated us to view Connemara differently, not in the traditional way, but to see it from he was probably now teaching us to view it from the point of view of the colours and the impact that Connemara can have on all of us from different aspects. So I would say that, excuse me, sorry for that, but the main things at this point in time that are influencing you are probably your garden, which was created around the house in the 1870s, both by yourself and your wife Joan, when you brought in clay and boulders and bog oak to create not such a formal garden, but you wanted to bring in wildflowers and cultured flowers, and this gives you this wonderful splash of colour which is evident in the paintings here today. And beyond that was the bog, which was just beyond his boundary wall, which was in earlier days, that section of what is now known as the Roundstone Bog was owned by the Marconi Company. And it was here where Marconi's wireless station sent off the first transatlantic messages. And to those of us in Connemara, the bog was up until now the source of our fuel. And it was a resource, but it was also a treacherous place, because we would be told by older generations that you could get lost in the bog. You certainly never went into the bog at night. And there was always stories about the amount of animals that got lost in bog holes and people getting lost in the bog, and premature babies being buried there. And so the bog was a sort of a mysterious place, and I feel that the many moods of the bog are reflected in your paintings, and in particular this one, Moonrise in Connemara, and that and one or two of the others further down here really depict Connemara, the dark side of the Connemara bog. But in the 19th century, we were told that the bog was a barrier to progress. You couldn't find a decent foundation for a road in it, and it would really kept the people very isolated, and it helped to perpetuate the ignorance that was there, because new ideas weren't being brought in. But many government reports were produced on how to reclaim it, and people like Mitchell Henry spent an awful lot of money trying to reclaim the bog and bring it onto arable land. Today, of course, the bog of Connemara are one of its natural assets, and it is recognised as a natural habitat for flora and fauna. And that section of the bog on the other side of your wall is now owned by the OPW, and the flora and fauna thrive there under government protection. But it is this aspect of the modern bog, if a bog can ever be modern given the date of it, but the atmosphere of the bog as you find it today is captured in many of the other paintings that are around here, and in particular the pools, these beautiful still dark pools that are really treacherous bog holes in many cases, but they all look so inviting with the water lilies there looking very tranquil, but they belie what they really are. Three of the paintings in particular that I am struck by are poppies near Roundstone, breathing in the air and escape from time. I think they're very aptly named, and I don't think anybody could ever walk past any of these paintings without being forced to stop and study them more closely. When I came along to see the paintings earlier on in the week, Tom explained to me about what was involved in bringing that lovely textured finish to those wonderful paintings where you see so much detail in them. And apparently this is done by layers and layers of paint being applied over long periods of time, which requires a great deal of patience and dedication. But I think the end result is really beautiful, and it gives you that lovely depth and colour that you find, and it is well worth all the effort. I just hope that I can find some of the dedication in my work that you seem to continue to find in yours. Two other favourites would, of course, be the Brothers and Old Faithful. Traditional cottages and local characters, two things that are almost extinct in Connemara today. And in the foreground again is this wonderful splash of a natural garden with all this depth of flower and colours. But the present generation in Connemara, the men of Connemara go to work in blue jeans and black tracksuit bottoms, and not quite as in keeping with the landscape as their ancestors. And I can't help wondering how the artists of the future will depict them. Will they look any different than guys going? I can't see it happening. But the poppies, of course, and the irises are everywhere in the paintings, as indeed are the irises everywhere in Connemara at the moment. When you're driving through, you'll see them in swampy fields close to the road. And in particular, I think listening to the wind, that this beautiful painting where you have the irises looking in beautiful shades and very tall and elegant and still, although probably waiting for the wind at this point. Now, Kenneth, Tom very kindly supplied me with a book on Kenneth and a DVD on Kenneth. So I'm not going to tell you his whole life story, but if there's anything he's too shy to talk about later on, you can come and ask me. I've now become an expert on Kenneth. But Kenneth has reached that stage in life where people celebrate their age rather than deny it. And I think looking at this collection, you'll agree with me that the vibrancy of his work certainly belies the age of the artist. And many people would probably say you were fortunate in coming to Connemara because it has proved to be a source of such great inspiration for you. But I would say that Connemara was fortunate in attracting you because you have become a wonderful ambassador for the region down throughout the I was going to say centuries. And your work is a timeless reminder of the peace, the tranquility and the beauty that can be found there. So long may your work continue.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely lovely. Now the man himself would like to say a few words to Kenneth.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a rather special exhibition, not just because it's 60 years since we started working together, but because of the variety of work that's together here at this particular time. And the point about some of the work, such as the chap of old fellows there, Peeling Spuds, which would be typical of the work that myself and my colleagues would have taught in the 50s and 60s. And indeed, some of my own drawings, paintings from when I was a student, which are down at the wall there. We got little plaques around that tell you a little bit about them. That was the ethos of the time. That was the style that we all worked in, and that is the basis for much classical work that my daughter and my colleagues and myself still teach occasionally. However, because there are many, many good artists in Dublin, in London, in Spain, in Italy, where I've worked, doing much the same sort of thing in their own environments. The same style, the same type, a little better perhaps, much the same, possibly better because their heart would be more in it than mine. And I needed, coming to Connemara, to find something more personal of myself, which complements what I was saying just now, if I may say so. At the time, when I first came to Ireland to teach in Northern Ireland in the College of Art in 1953, I'd graduated from the University of Wales just previously, having served time in the Fleet Era, and we knew from family history that there were connections between my family and the Cork and Wexford. The uncles and the aunts all talked about Ireland as it was then, and it seemed to me to be just the place to spend 5 years or so before moving on, you see. And so that was fine. But then Joan and myself, we used to go all around Ireland in the summer holidays camping, and we camped in every single county. There's a nice little quarry outside Ramsstone, which we found to be very useful to put a tent. This was about 50 years ago. And at that time, we were really thinking that we'd like to have a house somewhere in the west of Ireland. And eventually, we managed to buy this tumble-down old cottage, which was really a bit of a ruin, at Ballinboy, near Clifton. And then some years later, another dealer was very interested in tracking down precisely where my family came from. And to my amazement, apparently half the family came from Westport during the famine, as happened. Half went to America, our American cousins, the other half went to London. And they worked as manservant and maidservant in one of the big, obviously, Anglo-Irish houses. So there must have been some strange fascination for me to buy, at that time, a house whereby every nail and every piece of cement, every bag of cement came all the way from Galway. It was damn expensive, I can tell you. And my daughter, who is with us today, I'm proud to say, is an expert at mixing cement for me. We spent about 20 years getting the roof and the house on, the last 25 years getting the garden out of the bog, to which you're all welcome. And so, as a result of that connection, which has been already so amply referred to, I felt that I needed to get a more personal relationship with the work. In other words, to do something which was not as good as, or even better than, perhaps, that which was on the market already, although there was already market for it, then as now. In fact, some years ago, quite a few years ago, an English gallery wanted me to do nothing but fellas digging craters and standing outside houses, and that's all they wanted. They wanted, and they were talking like 50 pictures every month or two, which does happen. I have 2 ex-students who do produce paintings, but they're not quite the same as these. And so for me, I wanted something which was more mental. I mean that in the best possible taste, by the way. Something which made you think, made you realize that it's quite different to anybody else. And so whether it's good or bad, I'm not in a position to judge. You're here to do that. But it is different, and for me, vive la différence. I want to maintain what is, for me, a very personal interpretation of the area. And as they say, that's where I make my bones. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention, and enjoy the exhibition. Thank you.